Hello, everyone. My name is Ken Lewicki of channelinginc.com, and today is the Ask Ken Show. Welcome to the Ask Ken Show. Welcome, welcome. And this is where it's a really cool thing that I do once a month, which is I get questions from the audience, and what I do is live channel the answers. So in case you're wondering what I do for a living, full-time for a living, is I teach people how to channel. And you can go to my website, channelinginc.com, to find out more about any online live events that I do on a regular weekly basis and monthly basis. All sorts of cool things like Ascension Group Healing and Intro Channeling Workshop, Intro Animal Communication Workshop, and then my full certification workshops and all sorts of other different events that I do on a regular basis. So welcome to the Ask Ken Show. If you are watching this, please just type in your name, where you're from, and any questions that you have, and I will live channel the answers. So let's start with the first question. The first question is, can you have a strong connection with a grandparent even though they died before you were born? And the answer is yes. So I get this quite often in my workshops where in my channeling level 2 workshop, I teach people how to channel loved ones, what's called mediumship. And in that workshop is where sometimes my students, they want to connect with, they have a really strong connection with a grandparent, and they haven't even ever met them. Like their grandparent died before my client was born, or maybe just shortly after when they were a baby. But they still feel really drawn to their grandparent, which is super cool. So the reason why this is because if you think of like the big scheme of things, like long term, what happens is when we can live a life, we're living this life, and then when we die, we go to the astral realm to be with our soul family. And then when we choose to incarnate again, we incarnate again, live a certain period of time, and then when we die, we cross back over again, and we go back to our soul family in the astral realm, and then reside there for a while, and then choose to incarnate again, and then live on this planet for a certain period of time until we die and cross over, and then go back to the astral realm, and so on and so on. So this is called reincarnation, and reincarnation is basically where we live for a while, and then we die, cross over the astral realm, be with our soul family, come back, and then do the same thing over and over again. And in our soul family, there's certain members of our soul family that we have a really strong connection to, actually really all of them. And it's the reason why we have such a strong connection to our soul family members is because we've resided with them for forever, like literally eons. And so we know them really, really well. And therefore, even if, let's say, a grandparent is alive and then has children, which is your parents, and then your parents have children, but before your parents have children, that grandparent dies. But then now you're born, and your parents talk about your grandparents or their parents, and you're like, you see pictures and other memories of them, even though you've never met them, or maybe you were really young when you met them, but then they died. The reason why, most likely, is because they are the same member of your soul family. And most likely, like on a soul level, so your soul resides right here in the center of your sternum area. And you're welcome to do this too. You can go ahead and just feel into your soul. And your soul is like a memory bank. It remembers everything that you've ever experienced, not just from this lifetime, but also from previous lifetimes. And so if you tune into your soul in relation to your grandparent, you can actually remember and recall that past lifetime that the two of you had together. And most likely it's more than just one lifetime you've had together, but it's not just the lifetimes you've had together. It's also in between lives in the astral realm that you've resided together as a soul family member. And that's where you go and you hang out when you're in between lives as well. And that's the reason why you're most likely having this um, really strong soul connection with the family member, even if you've never met them. Have you ever like met somebody and you've never met them before, and then all of a sudden you feel like you have this amazing connection with them, and it feels like you've known them forever? Most likely that's because they're a member of your soul family. And that's how you know this, is because if they truly are a member of your soul family, then um, you have this amazing connection with each other, even if it's somebody, you've just briefly met. You just met them maybe one day at some random event or something like that, or maybe on the street, or just somehow, and you're just like, oh my God, I feel like I've known you forever. It's most likely because that's the reason why, is they are a member of your soul family. Just because somebody, just a little note, just because somebody's a member of your soul family doesn't mean everything's going to be hunky-dory in your relationship and you two are going to get along just fine. You might be, and you might be amazing, and that's great. But there also might be, because of your childhood growing up, you have human baggage, and their childhood growing up, they have human baggage. Plus, there's other stuff that could influence all that. Different aspects, different systems of them might be unhealthy, or traumas that they've gone through, or it could also be past life stuff that they've carried over, or past life stuff that you've carried over, or it could be ancestral stuff that's come down through the lineage on their side, or past life or ancestral stuff that's come down through your lineage on your side. So that's kind of like tainting the relationship, all this and that. And that's why I really encourage my students to really do their self-healing along the way, no matter what relationship they're in. So if they're in a relationship and it's working out and you two are growing together, great. And if not, good. Even more reason to do your own self-healing. And that might include any modalities that you might have to do healing on yourself, and also seeing other healers along the journey so that you can keep working on yourself. And if you stay together with this person and you still remain friends, that's great. But if not, at least you've done your healing work along the way. And so there's no guarantees that if somebody is a member of your soul family that you meet with them, that everything's going to be great. But you can still become friends long term if you keep working on yourself, and keep working on your own self-healing and stuff like that, and just try to make the relationships fun and healthy and all that good stuff. So my name is Ken Lewicki, and I do what's called the Ask Ken Show once a month. So if you're watching this, please give a shout out, your name and where you're from. And then if you have any questions that you would like to ask to do a spirituality, to do a channeling, please just ask that question in the comments and I will live channel the answers. So it's great to see everyone. All right. So let's go on to the next question. The next question is it possible that I was a parent of one of my parents in a past lifetime? And the answer is yes. So this is really cool. This is an exercise I do in channeling level 3, when I delve deep into past lives and how to do past life readings. And I also delve deep into lineage or ancestry and how to do ancestral readings. So what can happen is, if you go up your branch, let's say, I don't know, I'm just picking randomly, but let's say you go up your mother's side, up the lineage branch. Okay, so your mother's parents and then your mother's grandparents and so on and so on. Well, you could actually be one of your own ancestors in a past lifetime, where you've actually incarnated in that lifetime, met somebody, had a child, and then that is maybe, let's say, your grandparent, and then your grandparent has a child who has your parents, and then your parents has you. And that is really cool stuff. So the cool thing is there's an experiment that was done where they take a swab of somebody and they put it in a petri dish, but they take this petri dish and they put it in another room. And then what they do is they do really massive healing on this person. And then they look at the petri dish that isn't even connected to them. It's in another room. And they notice that the swab that they've taken, the DNA swab, has actually gone through healing, even though that they're not connected, and that, right? And it's in a totally different room, that the DNA in the petri swab is healed, just like they have done healing on themselves or with the practitioner. And so it's really wild that what you do is actually healing your cells and everything else as you're going through these healing processes, which is why I also do these once a month Ascension Group Healings, where I heal whole groups at a time, because this is a really important part of the healing process, along with learning how to channel. That's why I do that, because I want my students to be a good, healthy, clean, clear channel and a conduit for this, and not tainting the answers and getting themselves in the way and influencing the answers, but they get themselves out of the way, so they're just a clear conduit. So then what they did is they did the same experiment where they took a DNA swab from the person's child and a DNA swab from the person's parent, and then their own, and they put all three, like their child in a petri dish, their parent in a petri dish, and then their own DNA swab in their own petri dish. And they took all three of these petri dishes, they put it in another room, and then they did massive healing on just that one person. And what they found is that when they reassessed, reanalyzed those petri dishes, that not only did that person's own DNA get healed, but so did their child's DNA, and so did their parents' DNA. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up to do with ancestral healing is because if you truly were a member of your own, you were born in a past lifetime as, let's say, a great grandparent, and then you had your parent, or you had a child, and that was your grandparent, and then your grandparents had your parents, and then had you. When you do healing on yourself, you're actually healing your lineage all the way back up as well. Maybe not all the way, but quite far back up. So you could actually be doing healing on yourself in a past lifetime when you were your own parent or grandparent, and then that lineage comes down to you and actually helps you to heal even more. Pretty cool, hey? It's pretty wild stuff, which also the bigger reason is for healing yourself in this lifetime. And a bonus is that you may be healing your children and your children's children, and stop those generational traumas and ties from being passed down to your children, even if they've already happened. And even if you have children, you can even have adult children, and they can be receiving the healing as you're doing your own healing. I don't recommend people try to focus on, this is why I'm doing my healing. Do the healing for you. This is what I emphasize. Do it for you. And if you get any bonus where it helps to heal your parents, great. And if it gets any bonus where it helps to heal your children and grandchildren, great. That's a bonus. But do the healing for you so you can be healthier, and as a bonus. So yeah, I just find this fascinating. Like, it's really, really emphasize doing your self-healing, whether that's your own modalities or going seeing other healers on a regular basis. And I do both. I really do. I do both. Very important. So we have Sin tuning in. Thank you, Sin, for tuning in. Cynthia from Nova Scotia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have Chantel here from Belgium. Whoop, whoop. She's taken a couple of my channeling workshops already, and she knows a little bit about what I'm talking about, to do with past lives and stuff like that, because we delve deep into that in my channeling level 2. We have Vicky Jessam, I hope that I said that right, from Drumheller. And thank you, Vicky, for tuning in. So if you're watching this, please feel free to write your name and where you're from and any questions that you might have. So the next question is, does scrying into a crystal ball improve your channeling? And the answer is it can, yeah. So what scrying is basically where you get an object, like something that's like clear or something like that, and you scry like a crystal ball. You're looking into that crystal ball, and that's called scrying. So oftentimes we see on these, like, shows, TV shows or movies or whatever, and you have the psychic, someone goes into this lady's place or whatever, and she's like, ooh, let's see what this crystal ball has to say. And so basically it's called scrying. It doesn't have to be a crystal ball. It could be a candle or a candle flame. You can also scry into a candle flame. So basically what scrying is, and the purpose why some people do it is because what it does is if you look into a crystal ball, if you've ever done it where you just stare in it for a long period of time, you kind of go into this almost like trance state where you lose yourself, because you're just like, whoa, where am I? Like, you just kind of get lost in it. Same thing with staring into a candle flame. If you've ever stared into a candle flame for a long period of time, again, you just kind of go into this semi-trance state where you kind of lose yourself and all your thoughts fade away. And that's why some people do scrying, is because when you're scrying, it allows your thoughts to fade away so that you can more easily connect to the spirit realm, and then allow the spirit to come through. The spirit's already been there. It's always been there. Maybe not always, but it's been there maybe for quite a while. But your mind, your monkey mind, your monkey brain is just going a million miles a minute, the hamster in the wheel kind of thing. So it can't hear that noise, or it can't hear the spirit over the noise of your monkey brain. So then when you scry and you look in a crystal ball, you kind of go into this like trance state where your mind just stops, going really fast. Your thoughts stop, and then poof, then the spirit can come in through you and connect with you, and then you could pass along any messages or receive any messages, whether it's messages for you or messages for someone else. I'm not against this. I'm totally for it. If you want to try it, please experiment with it. It's totally fine. I teach my students a more powerful method. What I teach them to do is how to actually channel and get to a point where they don't need any tools. They don't need to carry their crystal ball with them every office meeting they go to, or when they meet up with friends and family, at family gatherings or something like that. I mean, maybe your family's into that. That'd be cool. I know mine would be kind of weirded out by that. So, what instead I want my students to do is get to a point where they can channel anywhere, anytime, on the spot, in the moment, any situation, any circumstance, doesn't matter where they are or what they're doing, and they could just channel live, no problem. And the reason why this is really important is because the way that I want my students to be able to get is where they can channel, like in board meetings, or they can channel with their friends, and or they can, if they meet a stranger, it's no big deal. They're just channeling like they're having a regular conversation. So I just want to clarify, there's two different kinds of channeling. There's what's called trance channeling, and what I call a term that I developed, that I coined, I call it conscious channeling. So what trance channeling is basically where your soul, so we talked about your soul earlier, it's where your soul leaves your body. And then what happens is another soul comes in and takes over your body. And that's called trance channeling. So I'm not saying this is good or bad, right or wrong. I'm not for it or against it. I'm pretty neutral on it. If you want to do it, great. If you don't, that's fine. Instead, what I teach, though, is what's called conscious channeling, where you're conscious, you're aware of what's going on. You don't allow another soul to come in and take over your body. And the reason why I teach this is because I want to make channeling like a normal thing, where it's a normal everyday part of your life. You don't have to be all like weird and woo woo about it, and roll your eyes in the back of your head to allow another soul to come in and all this other stuff. You don't have to do any of that. You can just be living your everyday normal life. You know who you're channeling, whether it's one of your spirit guides, whether it's your higher self, whether it's your soul, whether it's somebody's loved one or somebody's other spirit guide, on and on and on, or a sprite, fairy, dragon, angel. I teach my students how to channel all these things and make it a normal everyday part of your life. Like, it's no big deal. You're just living your life. If you're with somebody and you're channeling, let's say their loved one or their spirit guide, you just channel the messages to them. If they're into spirituality and they want to know, you might use from your spirit guide and their spirit guide, they might say something to them. Or that person might not be into any of this and maybe even against it or whatever, but you can still be channeling their spirit guide and passing along messages. But you don't have to necessarily tell them, because you're just having a normal conversation. So what you see me doing right now is I'm actually channeling. I'm channeling right now while I'm talking. And anyone who knows me in person, who's ever met me in person, knows that this is just the way I live my life. So I don't do channeling. I don't add channeling on the rest of my plate. Like I have to do it. No, I am channeling because I've done it so much. I've become it, where it just becomes a normal everyday part of my life. So if I'm at the grocery store, I'm channeling. If I'm driving my car, I'm channeling. By the way, recommended, keep your eyes open if you're driving while you're channeling while you're driving. If you're at work, I'm channeling. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're having a conversation or going out for dinner with somebody, you're channeling. Like, it doesn't matter where you are. Even if you're doing chores and stuff around the house, you're channeling. Like, it's all the time. You're just keeping that line open. So if one of your spirit guides comes in and wants to talk with you, then you have that line of communication open, and you're more than welcome to channel them. So you don't have to go into this trance state. You don't need a crystal ball around you to scry, I mean, it can help, but eventually I want to get you to a point where you don't need the crystal ball. Eventually I want to get you to a point where you don't need the candle, and you can just channel anywhere right away. Like, have you ever had a time when you feel like, something feels like you want to download a message, or you want to download some like a what direction or what to say or what to do in that moment, but you're like, oh no, I got to go home, and I want to really sit down and quiet my mind and feel into this, but then by then the opportunity has passed. That's why it's really important to try to keep working on honing your channeling abilities, so that you can channel on the spot in the moment, so that if right when that opportunity is coming up, someone's talking to you about something, you can check to see, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, that. And you're actually, it's alive right in the moment, just like, which is the reason why I do the Ask Ken show, is because I want to teach people that you can just channel live on the spot in the moment. And so what I'm doing is actually emulating for you how I want you to be eventually in your channeling journey. And you could try doing this on your own, and I recommend it. Like, try learning how to channel on your own. Please do. I also recommend too that if you take formal channeling training, like actual certification training, where you can actually learn how to channel formally, and you get a certification at the end of it. This is the courses that I offer, and then that'll really help to. This is just the table of contents. What that'll do is it'll really help to accelerate your channeling abilities, accelerate your spiritual growth, so that it's not arduous and taking decades for you to learn and figure out on your own. Okay. So this is the Ask Ken show. If you're watching, just go ahead, ask any questions in the comments, and I will live channel the answers. And if you also can leave your name and a shout out of where you're from, I'll give you a shout out. Just let me know where you're from. That'd be great. And let's go on to the next question. So that was scrying, which I love that question. And I used to do that quite often in my early days of learning to channel. Is pretty fun. Do I need protection before going out in the public or to work? The answer is no. A lot of people get very paranoid about, like, they take my. Sometimes it could happen before taking my workshops, but sometimes it happens. They start learning about all this spiritual stuff, and then they start to get kind of like, oh, I need protection now. I need protection. I got to protect myself. And the answer is, so it's kind of a tough question because, like, in my early days, my infrastructure aspects weren't quite as strong and healthy as they could be. And so what was happening was I was almost like open like a sieve, like where energies could come in, different entities, different kinds of things could come in and really affect me and affect the quality of my life. And what I've learned is, over time, with the healing that I've done and with the protection that I've increased my protection systems, is that I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to worry about protection anymore. And here's the reason why. A couple reasons. So first of all, through channeling, I've been able to identify over 100 different aspects that make us up as a human. And these aspects are all not just what the aspects are, but what their functions are. So think of like your organs. Let's say 500 years ago, somebody goes into a doctor and says, "Oh, I have a stomach ache," right? And the doctor 500 years ago has no clue. And then let's say the patient eventually died, and then the doctor would cut the patient open and look inside and go, "Okay, well, there's all this stuff in here, but I don't know what it is or what its function is." Right? But then through the advancements of modern technology over the last few centuries, scientists have been able to discover not just what the different organs are, but also what their functions are. So this now, in this modern day and age, if somebody goes in with a stomach ache, they go to the hospital or doctors and they get a scan, and then the scan is able to identify, okay, oh, this is what's going on. And then the surgeon or doctor can go in with the precision instruments, let's say like a laser thing or whatever, and go in there, little tiny incision, go in there, fix it all up, and then pull it out. And then within a few days, that person is healed and better than ever. Same kind of concept happens with our non-physical aspects. So not only have I been able to identify the different aspects that make us up as a human, over 100 different aspects, but I've also been able to identify their function, so that when a client comes to me and they're struggling with a certain issue, or like an unhealthy behavior or an addiction, or maybe they're have anxiety, or some trauma from childhood or from other reasons, what I can do is, through medical mediumship, I can scan the person, find the root cause of what's going on, and then heal and clear that part of them, that aspect of them, so that they're healed, and then they can have a good, healthy life going forward. And so, do I need protection before going to going out in public and in work to work? And the answer is when you this is why I recommend doing healing along your journey as well. So if I just what I when I first started teaching my students how to channel, that's all I would do is teach them the mechanics of how to channel. But then what I realized over the years of teaching them how to channel is they also needed healing and clearing, because a lot of them had blocks and other things that were going on that were hindering their growth, hindering their abilities to channel. So they were hitting a plateau, hitting a peak, and they couldn't go beyond that. But with the healing and clearing included in that, then they could go way beyond it. So now, also, what's happened, what I've noticed, is that people need that healing and clearing because, on a spiritual level, is if, let's say, something external comes in and tries to affect you. So I would say about 95% of all my students that come to me are empaths. And an empath is somebody who's highly sensitive to people, to places, to environments, all that. So what happens is these energies come in, whether it's from another person or an environment or whatever, and then it sticks inside of them. And then they get all like it affects them, and not just a little bit, because they're empaths, it affects them detrimentally quite significantly sometimes. But when the person is healing and heal themselves, then what happens is these, if think of this water right here, if it was all gunked up and it had all this like gunk inside of it, then when energies come in, it has something to attach itself to. It can attach itself to these contaminants. But when you're doing your healing work and you heal yourself, then the energies come in, but it has nothing to attach itself. So you feel it, and you're like, okay, I notice this. I feel this energy coming in either from this other person or from an environment or whatever. And you just feel it, you notice it, but it doesn't stick and it just passes through you. Okay, so that's why healing is really important. And also, what I do with my students is I give them spiritual upgrades. And the spiritual upgrades is what it does is it enhances their infrastructure so that it's more resilient to these external energies, whether it's again from another person or from an environment. So let me give you an example. Our protection system is made up of a whole bunch of different systems. A lot of people think it's just one thing. It's not. It's actually several things. So one of the main protection systems is your auric field. Your auric field, though, is powered by your chakra system and a bunch of other systems. So if your chakra system isn't as healthy as it can be affecting your auric field. Or just your auric field alone could have holes in it, could have tears in it, could be really thin, could have been compromised, and just from life, like life happens, right? So you're driving down the road and some jerk cuts you off, and you're like, ah, right? And then all of a sudden that could create a tear or some sort of anomaly in your auric field, which can affect it. And then maybe later on after that, you're picking up energies a lot easier because your auric field has been compromised. Another thing also is that your auric field sometimes doesn't have enough power to power itself. So like there's a whole bunch of things that can affect your protection system, including like your chi energy, checking your chi, making sure that your chi is nice and strong and vibrant, and on and on and on. But again, I don't want everyone to watching this going, oh my God, I'm so messed up. This no. Where you're at right now is perfect. It's wonderful. And if you go see a healer and the healer helps you with some of these things, then you're even more amazing and more beautiful and empowered and all that. And speaking of empowerment, this is where I want all my students to be, is where they feel empowered. So by doing the healing and clearing and the spiritual upgrades, attunements, activations, things like that, then what that does is that makes your protection system more stronger, more powerful, more resilient to these external energies. And also another thing I get my students to do is a lot of times people have collapsed their auric field. And what happens, you get in an argument with somebody and then you cower down and your auric field collapse. Or again, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you get all like jarred and then you collapse your auric field. It's not done intentionally. We all do it. I've done it many times. But intentionally, what I get my students to do is really just expand their auric field, expand their protection system. Make it nice and big and nice and strong. Like, don't be shy. Like, make it nice and big. And then this way it has some buffer between where your auric field is and then before the energies get to you, rather than it being super close and there's no buffer. It's just like, wow. And then also sometimes our auric field has like, it's like Swiss cheese and has a whole bunch of holes in it and tears and things like that. So with healing the auric field can also help with our protection system. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because how often do you think I protect myself before going out? Never. How often do you think I protect, an event before I do it? Never. I just go and live my life. People, just go and live your life. Live your life. And with training, with channeling training, if anything comes and compromises you or affects you, then I'll teach you how to identify those things so that you can get rid of it. Things that are not of the light, to do with spirituality, to do with channelings, things like that. And then you get rid of it real quick, and then you move on with your life and you keep operating and working in the light. Hence the term light worker. I want all of you to be light workers, working in the light, stay in the light. Don't go dabbling in that dark stuff, right? But if something of the dark, of not of the light comes across your path, I'll teach you how to deal with it, get rid of it, and continue working in the light worker. Now, um, also too, that's the real reason why I get people, I emphasize them doing their healing and clearing, so that as they're doing along the journey, right? Because I used to get to a point where I used to think, I remember there was like in my early days, I've been teaching people how to channel for over 20 years now. And in my early days, I used to think, okay, when I'm healed, then this, when I'm healed, then that. I used to always think, one day when I'm healed. And don't get me wrong, I do believe in miracles. I really do. However, I kind of, about 10 years into my spiritual journey, my spiritual awakening, I kind of came to the conclusion where I'm like, you know what? What if I never get to a point where I'm fully healed? What if I never get to a point where I'm there? Because I used to think when I'm there, when I get there, wherever there is or was. And now I've just been like, I remember the time I had that conclusion or that aha moment where it came to me, and I'm like, what if this whole healing journey is just a lifelong thing? Like, can I be okay with that? Can I embrace that? And another thing that would happen that I really was a big change, a pivotal change in my journey was I used to always think like, you know, my that I'm going to like, just work on getting healed and work on getting healed, but nothing's really going to happen. But then what I did is like every time I would do something like an unhealthy behavior, I'd make a mistake or I'd repeat, how we have these patterns that we keep repeating, these unhealthy patterns, like, and then I know what that's like. I've kept doing that over and over again. And when I would do it in the past, what I would do is I'd beat myself up and I'd be really hard on myself. And then I would be like, dang it, I thought I healed this. Like, what's the matter with me? I'm so screwed up. I haven't healed this, and I would be really hard on myself. But then what I did is I got to a point in my journey, my healing journey, where I said, you know what? Every time that something surfaces and I repeat a pattern or something comes up from, I don't know, childhood or whatever, and it surfaces from my subconscious to consciousness, then what I want to do is use that as an opportunity to heal and clear it. And every time, if it comes up again later on, then I use it as an opportunity to heal and clear it again. And it comes up again, I use it as an opportunity to heal and clear it again. And I just keep like taken like swipes at it to keep trying to work at healing and clearing it, whether it's my own self-healing or with another healer, and going to see them to help me heal this thing once and for all. And then what I found is that if I change my attitude towards healing and I look at it as, okay, yeah, that sucked what I just did, or that sucked what's surfacing inside of me, this event that I'm replaying because somebody triggered me and it's bringing up, mommy issues or daddy issues or unresolved stuff that I haven't resolved yet, or reminds me of this person who used to bully me as a child and I haven't resolved it yet. Every time it surfaces, what I do is I use this as an opportunity to heal it and keep working at it. And I look forward to healing it rather than before and beat myself up. And I found by doing this, it's really just accelerated my healing journey rather than it being slow and arduous like this. Okay, so anytime that you get triggered or upset or something bothers you or you repeat an unhealthy behavior, try to look at it as an opportunity to heal it once and for all. And then also what happens is it helps you with your protection because you're now a clean vessel. So when those energies come in, they just pass through you rather than getting stuck. And for those of you that are empaths out there, give me a shout out, say hi, welcome. Again, most of my clients, including me, we're all empaths. And there's about one out of 10 of Earth's population are empaths. So it's not like it's super common, but common enough where there's a lot of us out there. And a lot of my students, they want to turn their empathic abilities off. They're like, how do I shut this off? I just can't, I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like constantly being bombarded by all these energies. But instead, the way I want you to look at this is like, okay, how can I be an empath and use it as a superpower? Use it as an amazing thing to do amazing things with it, and look at it like, okay, I can be an empowered empath. Because when you are an empath and you're a healthy empath and you know how to use it for amazing things, you can do amazing things for yourself and you can do amazing things for others, because empaths are highly sensitive to people, places, things, environments, and energies. And by you being a healthy empath, you can be sensitive to these things, whereas other people that are not empaths, it's not right or wrong, good or bad. Okay, don't go there. Don't think that we're better than others or they're better than us or whatever. It's none of that stuff. It's just we're different. We're empaths. So when we feel these sensitivities, other people might not feel them, so it might just pass over them, and then they don't even notice it. But because we are empaths, we can do amazing things with this, and we can really, really help people on a much greater level than other people who just don't feel these sensitivities. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Yeah, and people like oftentimes Vicky's saying my children are empaths too, and yeah, very what's called HSP, highly sensitive people or persons, highly sensitive persons, HSPs. So yeah, then eventually where I want you to get in your healing journey, in your spiritual journey, is where you don't have to worry about protection. Just go out there and live your life. Live your life. Go to these different events. If something comes up that's bothering and affecting you, work on healing and clearing it. If it's something external, then through my training, channeling level 2, that Chantel said, she took my training, and she said I did 2 courses and 100% recommend it. Thank you, Chantel. I appreciate it. And most of my business comes from referrals from people who've taken my workshops and recommended to other people. And you know you're doing something right when most of your business comes from referrals. So this is the Ask Ken show. If you're watching right now, please give me a shout out, say your name, where you're from, say hi. And if you have any questions to do with spirituality, please type in your questions and I will live channel the answers. Okay, let's go to our next question. And the next question is, why are you not sexist, racist, ageism, or discriminatory in any way? Okay, so I've actually been thinking about this quite a bit in the last few days. Um, it's very difficult for me to be sexist or racist against another race, because I've lived in a past life this race, like I've incarnated on planet Earth many, many, many times, not just once but many times, and I've incarnated on pretty much every single continent and every single society as every single different race on this planet. So how could I be racist against another race when I've been that race in a past lifetime? We have this really weird thing, and I see it all the time. It's kind of like these people, they're born in this lifetime in a certain country, and then they grow up and they get all proud about, well, I'm this Canadian, this nationality, and it's the best country in the world. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? It's not the best country in the world. Why would you say that? Like, just because you were born in that country doesn't make it the greatest country in the world. Like, that's ridiculous. Because like, and they get all like proud about whatever their nationality is. And don't get me wrong, like if you want to have some like, okay, I'm from this country, and you know, Canadian, American, European, whatever, that's fine, right? That's this. But some people take it to such extreme where they like have this like almost like ego proudness, like that there's this nationality, when in the past lifetime you were born in another country. Does that make that country all of a sudden, better because you were born in that country in that lifetime? But this like, and then the next lifetime you're going to be born maybe probably in another country, and then we'll all of a sudden, oh no, that's now the best country in the world. Like it just gets so ridiculous, especially like with sports, and these people who get overboard with how like their country against another country, and we're the best country because we have this best sports team or other political system, or who knows, whatever reason, right? Like it's almost silliness. um, so if you look at it on a spiritual level, and we've all done this, we've all lived many lifetimes in many parts of the planet. We've all lived many races on different parts of the planet, and we've all incarnated as both male and female. So it's very difficult for me to be sexist against a female because I've been a female in many lifetimes. And I know for me, part of my healing journey, things that have surfaced for me was whenever one of my clients in my early days, so a long time ago, we're talking like 15 plus years ago, anytime she would, if one of my clients would bring up anything to do with like sexual abuse or rape or anything like that, after that, like I'd be able to contain myself during the session, but then afterward, for days after, I'd be all like shaking, like viscerally, like literally, like anxiety and shaking, and I can't sleep at night. And I would be like, and it would happen every time I would have a client when they would bring these topics up. And this went on for years. And then finally, through some me channeling and being able to figure out and trace it back, it's because in past lifetimes I was sexually abused, and not just one, but in three prominent ones that carried over into this lifetime. Because would you agree that sometimes some past lives can affect us in this lifetime? The answer is yes. And so in my case, I had these three different lifetimes where that happened as I was a female in that lifetime. So anytime in this lifetime that somebody would bring up that topic, like another female, I would get triggered subconsciously because on a soul level, my soul remembers these past lifetimes. And so by healing and clearing those, even though I'm a male in this lifetime and this has never happened to me in this lifetime, I was still reliving this from these previous lifetimes when I was a female. And by knowing this and understanding this, then how could I be sexist against another woman? How could I be sexist against another female? When in so many lifetimes I've been discriminated and like race, like discriminated against because I've been a female. And I'm like, why? I'm just a girl. I'm just a female. Why would you think I'm less than, or have to, keep my mouth shut, or not be able to be a member of society and work and, all this other stuff? Like, that's ridiculousness. So for me, it's very important. Like, I know there's like these concepts out there called like affirmative action, where basically they're like, okay, certain races, we don't have enough of that representation in our work, in our schools, in our governments, or whatever. So we need to purposely hire more people of these different races and cultures. And I'm like, no, because that's racism again. If you take two candidates and one has more qualifications than the other, but you're like, no, we need people of this certain race. So we push aside that person who's more qualified and we hire the person based on the color of their skin. It's still racism. It's still discrimination is discrimination is discrimination. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm for all that equal stuff. I do agree. But once you start putting in laws where you say somebody's going to get hired based on the color of their skin, now you're doing discrimination. You're discriminating against the people who are not of that certain race, right? You know what I'm saying? So where I see us as a society going as a planet is where we're evolving to, and it's getting better, and I'm glad about this, is where we get to a point where it doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter, if you're male or female, that we're all treated equally. It doesn't matter what your ancestors this or that, or your ancestors that or this, or whatever, this and that, all that other stuff. We're a human being, all part of the human race, the same race called the human species. And that's what we are made of, right? Because if we start putting these rules and these laws in this life, and then what happens is next lifetime, what if we incarnate as a different race and we incarnate into this culture, and then now we're discriminated against because we're a different race? Like, it's like, do we get this, like, on the big scheme of things, on how we've lived many lifetimes as many different races? So think about that next time. If you ever like catch yourself being racist against somebody, or like you get these children that are born, and when children are born, they grow up and they're never racist. They grow up playing with each other and this and that, but then somewhere along the lines somebody teaches them, oh, this race is bad, or this race is inferior, or not, whatever. But they learn that, those are learned. But the good news about this is that can also be unlearned. And the same thing with things like people that are because I work with a lot of people where their children or friends or whatever might be gay or, something like that. And some people, like parents and that, they get really upset about this. And I tell them, I'm like, okay, so your son has a boyfriend. And they're like, yeah, but it really, really bothers me. I'm like, yeah, but they're just loving each other. Like it's love. Like love is love. Let them love each other. It's okay. Like, so what if it's the same sex? Who cares? Like it's love is love. Like people, can't we just let people like love each other? They're not hurting anyone. They're just loving each other. So what, right? Like, and people get so up in a huff and a puff, right? And it's cultural things, religious things, or other things that indoctrinate them to think that these things are bad. But is it really? And scientists have studied other animals and other species and found that there are some that are, you know, bisexual and all these other kind of like, right? And that's normal. That's okay. So like, for us to be sexist or racist or any of these other isms is just ridiculous. And when we see it on a spiritual level, we can get beyond that as a society. And that's where I want to see all of you do that. And that's where spirituality comes in. Because if you think of these species on other planets, what's called highly evolved species, these species have surpassed all this. They don't have any of that. And we can get there as a society as well, where there's no discrimination, none of this other racism, sexism, or other isms that we have in our society today. And that's really where I see us going as a society. And we've come a long way. We really have. There's a lot less of it than in the last, 100 years ago or 500 years ago or even 1,000 years ago. All right. Why is integrity and ethics important in the spirituality industry? Because integrity and ethics are really important, and here's why. So what happens is when any of you watching this, please listen to this. This is really important, okay? Because what happens, the way that I look at it is we're kind of representatives for our field. And right now, spirituality is kind of going through a transition where it's kind of the Wild West, where everyone's doing anything, whatever they want. There's no real rules, regulations, or ethics that anyone is teaching and stuff like that. I do teach ethics, really important for that reason. But what happens is when people abuse their powers, their abilities, their spiritual abilities, or they're doing things that are unethical, what happens is the majority of the population out there, and especially in Western society, are not spiritual. And they're not like super like into the stuff. They think it's hogwash or woo-woo stuff or a bunch of crap or whatever. But then when someone comes around and comes along and they're super spiritual, but they're super like grounded and professional and living in integrity and just a good, honest, upstanding citizen of society, then these people who are not spiritual, they look at this person and they go, okay, cool. Like, you know what? Maybe there is something to the spirituality, and maybe they don't have to be all like weirdos and all this other stuff, and they can just be a normal, regular, everyday dude who lives their life with integrity and upstanding citizen of society, and that's attractive to me. And maybe there's something to the spirituality, and maybe I want to learn about it someday because this guy's a good representative of it. And they don't say this out loud, like consciously, but subconsciously they're thinking this. So this is where trying to like catch yourself and live in integrity whenever you do anything unethical. Like, please, 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 people, pay your taxes, keep your commitments. Try to, when you say you're going to do something, you do it. All those kinds of things. Don't lie, cheat, steal, manipulate people, things like that. Just live in integrity and live a good, honest life. And even if you don't do spirituality, it's still just a great way to live, right? It's just the best way to live. Okay, let's go on to the next question. So if you're watching this is the Ask Ken Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please feel free to leave your name and where you're from so that I can give you a shout out. And also, if you have any questions about spirituality, I will live channel the answers. Just type it in the chat message there. And if you'd like to know more about my trainings, please visit my website, channelinginc.com. And you can find out I have a whole bunch of spiritual events I do on a regular basis, and there's so much fun. Speaking of fun, my slogan for my business, channelinginc.com, my slogan is spirituality is meant to be fun. And the reason why that's my slogan is because too many people take this stuff way too serious. Let's have fun with it, people. Let's keep it light. Let's keep it playful. Let's keep it fun. And another reason why that's my slogan is because I found that since I made that my slogan, that my growth and my ascension, instead of it being like this, has skyrocketed because I'm making it playful and fun, and I'm not so serious all the time. And, right? Don't get me wrong. There's a time and place to be serious when you have to do the healing and clearing, but deal with that and then keep it fun for the majority of the time, and then deal with the odd serious thing here and there, and then keep it fun the majority of the time. Okay, let's move on. Next question. Does a soul reincarnate and continue on with their destiny? The answer is yes, and the answer is not necessarily no. So what happens is, when a soul reincarnates, like, let's say in this lifetime you have a certain path that you're going down, okay? So this is the topic of this is called timelines, in case you're wondering. So timeline, this is entire trainings that I do. I've done entire 2-hour trainings in my mastermind classes around this topic about timeline and timeline healing. It's super cool. And so what happens is, we're going down a certain timeline, a certain path, and in this lifetime, and then we can go on a different trajectory and stuff like that. But in general, we're going down a certain path. And then let's say we die and we cross over and go back to the astral realm to be with our soul family. And then later on, we decide to incarnate again. We're born as a baby. The question is, do we continue on this destiny, on the same path? The answer is possibly, but not necessarily. You can have a totally different blueprint for another lifetime, or you can have one that's relatively similar. So let's say, for example, sometimes when I'm watching like America's Got Talent or one of those kind of TV shows where, you have like a 8-year-old kid that gets up on stage and they start doing this amazing like musical performance, whether it's on a piano or singing or whatever. And you're like, okay, there's no way that they just learned this in this lifetime. Like, yeah, sure, they learned a lot in this lifetime, but they've definitely, you could tune into them and go, okay, they've definitely been a musician in a past lifetime and they've carried on with this in this lifetime. Like, it's crazy, crazy how I've seen that so many times. So we can continue on with our destiny. We can continue on, but not necessarily. And the reason why I say not necessarily is because what happens is, before we incarnate in the astral realm, we work with certain members of our soul family, usually like ascended masters in our soul family and other kind of like high spiritual souls that help us develop what I call like a rough blueprint. And the rough blueprint is what basically our life path or our life destiny that we can go down. And the reason why I call it a rough blueprint is because there's no guarantees in life. There's free will. For example, when I was a child, my dad had an opportunity he had a job offer to go work in Detroit, and I was a kid at the time. So if he had taken that opportunity, I would have had no choice, because I was a kid. I couldn't support myself. I would have had no choice but to go with him to this other city, and my life would have been totally different. But he had free will, and sometimes an adult or a parent or whatever, especially at a young age, or even as we're adults now, sometimes other people's free will, they can exercise that free will, and that can affect us and take us on a different trajectory. Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but just a different trajectory. So had I grown up in that other city in the United States, it just would have took me on a different path. And so now as an adult, what I try to do is, a lot of people think that free will is a bad thing, but is it really? Instead, the way I see free will is, I see free will as a great thing, as a wonderful thing, as a beautiful gift that we have, this amazing, beautiful gift called free will. And instead, the way I want to use free will is, I want to use it to my advantage. So if you're watching this, if you want to write this note down, use free will to my advantage. So what I do is, I do this on a regular basis, and I do this daily. So for example, if I'm out at a restaurant and I can choose something like a greasy cheeseburger, which I don't eat meat or anything like that, but let's just say hypothetically I did, or a salad, what am I going to do? I'm going to exercise my free will to eat the healthy thing and say, no, like, I could choose this thing and that could be unhealthy for me, but no, I'm going to choose this healthy thing, which is a salad instead. And I exercise that free will. Same thing, like, oh, there's this course that I really want to take, Ken's Channeling Level 1 Certification Workshop. It's like, oh, I don't know if I should or not, or this and that. But I'm like, you know what? I'm getting the guidance to take it. So I'm going to just give in, like go for it. I'm going to dive in, register for it, and take this certification workshop, and that use my free will to make these good, healthy decisions. Same thing with exercise. Like, oh, I don't want to exercise, but sometimes I just have to force myself to exercise. And guess what? Every time afterward, I always feel better. Imagine that. Those times I don't want to exercise are the times I feel better afterwards. Same thing with meditate. Sometimes I don't feel like I want to, but then afterward, I'm so glad that I did. And I'm usually calmer and more in tune and more mindful than I was before, things like that. So use free will to your advantage. Use it to do great, wonderful things with you. And another thing when it comes to channeling is when you're getting guidance from your spirit guides on either to not do something, listen to that and don't do it, no matter how tempted you are, no matter how much you really want to, just don't do it if you're getting guided not to. And then also on the other end of the spectrum, the other side of the coin is if you're being guided to do something, to take action, to do something, do it right away and just go for it, and use that free will to listen to your spirit guides, follow their guidance, because they have that higher perspective. They always have your highest and greatest good in mind, and they will always help you to allow beautiful, wonderful things unfold. And if things ever unfold and it's not beautiful and wonderful, please don't blame your spirit guides. It's not them. Most likely they were trying to warn you or help you to avoid that. And if you weren't listening, it just could happen. Then these negative things could happen in your life, but that doesn't mean it was them that caused it. It's never them. They would never cause anything bad to happen in your life. Your spirit guides are only here for your highest and greatest good and will only cause good things to happen in your life if you're listening to them and if you exercise your free will to follow their guidance and work with them in tandem, in conjunction with your life, to really help accelerate your life, not like this, but like this. And then that opens the doors to so many amazing things that can occur in your life, in all the different areas of your life: health, wealth, prosperity, relationships, career, hobbies, soul's purpose, and on and on and on. Okay? So great question. I love this question. Let's go to the next question. The next question is, does a soul evolve in a forward direction? In the ideal world, like I was talking to one lady probably about 15 years ago now, and she was talking about, she had this weird concept where she thinks that every time a soul incarnates, it's always like on the up and up. It's not always the case. And here's why, is because it's multifaceted. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't always evolve in an upward direction. So first of all, let me clarify something. It's impossible for a soul not to evolve. Every single person on this planet, all 7-8 billion people of us, every single one is evolving. Even if somebody is just going through the motions and going to work during the day and then coming home at night and watching TV, and then get up in the morning, go to work the next day, come home and watch TV, and that's all they do, and they're just kind of biding their time and wait until the day they die and not really doing anything like any personal development, anything like that, they're still evolving. Everybody is evolving. It's impossible not to be incarnated and not to evolve. So I want to make that very clear right off the bat. But I know for me, there was many times in my life when I was almost like de-evolving, when I was actually making unhealthy choices. I was doing unhealthy things, unhealthy behaviors, and I was actually getting worse and worse and worse. It was going in the wrong direction. And luckily for me, with a lot of hard work, a lot of persistence, seeking other healers, doing healing on myself, I was able to change that trajectory and come back on the up and up again. Some people don't, though. Some people just keep going down that slope until the day that they die, and then they die, and that carries with them potentially into another lifetime. Which, when you incarnate in a different lifetime, let's say, for example, in this lifetime, you do lots of healing and clearing, you do lots of ascension growth, spiritual upgrades, enhancements, attunements, all these other things, and you're on the up and up, you're doing really good. In the next lifetime, you can actually be incarnated in a different family, in a different society. You can have a really rough childhood, which can taint and affect your life in the next lifetime. You can have other things that affect you from past lives that are coming through, that are affecting you, that can also taint and affect your experience in that next lifetime. You can have things coming down your ancestral line, your lineage, that can also be affecting you. And you can also have things from your Akashic records that can be coming through in that other lifetime that can affect you. So all these things combined, and there's a lot more than that. Your systems, your, like, remember I mentioned how we have over 100 different aspects of us that I've been able to identify. If some of those aspects are compromised or not as healthy as they can be, that can also taint your experience. So for example, this one guy that I met, he had major anxiety, like really bad. And I was able to identify it. It's an aspect of him. This just happened to be for him, so don't think this is necessarily for you, but for him, in his case, he had this aspect of him called his psychometry aspect that needed healing, like really bad. So I did healing and clearing on him, and that's the only thing I did. And his anxiety went away just like that. Like it was so bad he couldn't even, function at work. He couldn't even take his kids to the mall, like anything like that. So that's where our aspects, our aspects can also affect us and our life experience. So in theory, ideally, this lady was really like, no, I have the belief that every lifetime we're only growing and getting better and healthier and all that. That's not necessarily the case. And I can guarantee in previous lifetimes, there were lifetimes when you were really enlightened, you were such a kind, wonderful person. And then I guarantee that there were other lifetimes when you were a total jerk. And then sometimes you might have been like, super nice and kind. And then another lifetime where you're like a total jerk and douchebag. And then another time you're like really kind and gentle and all that. And then another lifetime you're like a jerk and a douchebag, and so on and so on. So don't think every lifetime you get better and healthier and healthier. Now, having said that, this is what I'm doing in this lifetime. Is I'm purposely working on doing my healing and clearing and my ascension, my growth, my spiritual upgrades, all that as much as possible in this lifetime, so I can ascend as much as I can, hoping that a good portion of this will carry on into my next lifetime and next lifetimes, so I can continue on with this positive ascension growth, with this positive trajectory that I'm on. And that's my goal in this lifetime. So if you're on board with me on this, I I facilitate 1 hour Ascension Group Healings once a month. Feel free to check out my website for more information on how to register for that. And it's where I do 1 hour of super intense healing on the group online, and I heal entire groups, channel what the group needs the most, and just do healing on it. And I have over 100 different healings that I can do on the group, and I channel which ones they need the most. And I also add any spiritual upgrades and attunements along the way. And the reason why I do this, because this helps people to be a better, more clear, healthier channeler. So when they're channeling their spirit guides and other things, that they're more clear and they're not tainting the answers or getting themselves in the way as easily and as likely. So thank you all so much for tuning in. This is the Ask Ken Show. I do this once a month. And if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to message me. And also feel free to visit my website, channelinginc.com, where you can find all my spiritual events. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Talk to you soon.